Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Fisher, and welcome to today's Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive program for June 4th, 2025. We've actually got a double feature today, and we've got two special guests. Bethan Maher. Maher, did I get that right?
Bar,
Bethan Maher.
bar,
I'll
yeah.
practice. Executive Director of the Mount Rainier Scenic Railway will be here to talk about recent events on her property. And then we'll follow up with Robert W. Scott, a good friend of mine from Chehalis, Washington, giving us an update on the railfan cameras around the Pacific Northwest. We do this and
And some
that,
modeling too, if you want.
and some modeling too, if we want. So we have one program left in our spring campaign, and that will be 2 weeks from today. No coincidence there. And it's going to be Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive former board president, Bob Kelly. And Bob Kelly is going to be talking about writing a railroad book and getting it published. He's going to specifically talk about publishing and what's involved in getting stuff published. So then we're going to have a fall program again, and we'll be back. This is our sixth season now. And starting September 3rd, Scott Lotus, Executive Director of Center for Railroad Photography and Art, will be back doing a program on the Feather River Canyon. September 17th, Rick Panisi, railroad professional, started out with the Erie Lackawanna, is going to be doing a presentation on the Delaware and Hudson. It's an Eastern style program. October 15th, my good friend in the audience today, Gordon Glattenberg, will be available, and he's going to be talking about steam in Central America. October 29th, Margaret Weatherby, who is the Director of Collections for the Washington State Historical Society, will be with us talking about train pictures that they have in their archive at WSHS. I just want to come back and see, hey, Jack Christensen, are you there? Can you see if you can turn your microphone on? I want to see Jack. We tried to talk to Jack at our last program.
Can you hear me?
Jack, I can hear you loud and clear. Jack, at let's see, you're going to be 99, 100 years old in how many days?
18th is 16th of June.
16th. My
Yeah,
uncle turns 100 on the 18th of
yeah,
June. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Last time we had a Zoom meeting, my audio didn't work, but it's working today, so I'm
Well,
glad to be aboard.
and that's why I wanted to make sure that we talk to you first for a minute. So how have you been and what have you been doing?
Oh, I've been doing in-house exercises and uh, not much. I'm working on a couple projects. Um, I'd like to do an article on uh, trimming driving wheel tires to conform to wear and tear on the flanges and the treads of the steam engines, and uh, article on uh, hydrostatic tests of steam engines. Uh, I'm working on a couple articles there for the Northern Pacific Main Streeter magazine. Uh,
Because you started
plus,
out with the Northern Pacific, what was it, Christmas Eve of 1943?
uh, well, I started for the NP at age 16 as a wiper.
There you
Uh,
go.
and they kept changing the name of the railroad, but 57 years and 8 days later, uh, I finally retired. I was 73. I hated to leave, but you know, you get to be where you might be and get somebody hurt, make a mistake out there. So
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Then it's
yeah,
time to
but
go.
it was fun all the way. I'm surprised they paid us at all.
Yeah, I moved a locomotive of my own for the very first time, and and it was, I felt guilty. It was like I had my own private charter. So, so there you have it.
Yeah.
So, what I'm going to do now is Jack, I'm going to turn the program over to our guest speaker, Bethan Maher, so that she can talk to us about the Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad. I never get it right. I always have to look it up. Um,
Great.
and uh, um, and I'm going to see if I can figure out how to unpin myself, and so that I can turn this over to you. And as soon as I figure that, oh, there we go. Maybe that'll do it. Nope. As soon as I unpin myself, it's all yours. I promise.
No, you're good.
I may just stop my video. Then you don't have to look at me. There you go. All right. Take it away. And if we could all kind of mute our
Uh,
cameras and stuff to save on the bandwidth, that's always a good thing too.
yeah, so this is I have not prepared a nice slideshow and a pretty presentation, so y'all are stuck with me. And I apologize for that, but our fearless leader had ensured me that it would be okay if I didn't do prep work. So we'll just blame him.
We're just glad that you're
Um,
here and you've got some time to talk to us because we're so very concerned about everything and we appreciate you being here.
yeah, it's a messy situation. So I think the really, really quick sort of 10,000-foot overview is our little group, we reformed the original nonprofit that founded Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad. We reformed that group at the end of 2022. We started running trains again September 1st, 2023. And I did a presentation sort of on how we got there previously, but it hasn't been, quite 2 years yet that we've sort of been back in business. Um, in that time, this is a knock on wood, salt over my back, cross fingers, things have gone pretty darn well. I was doing a little bit of a recap yesterday. We've carried about 15,000 riders on rail cycle. So those are our, pedal bike, pedal carts, and 95,000 railroad passengers so far. So it's going pretty well. We've doubled our operational trackage. We put 6 miles of track back in service to New Reliance, which is between LB and Eatonville. And the Morton branch, which I think probably 5 years ago everyone considered dead and not coming back. We started making some real progress on the Morton branch, which was incredibly overgrown. There's a number of washouts on that section. So we've cleared 5.5 miles of that line, which is overgrown. And we've moved our rail bike operation between what was East Creek Junction, so that's just outside Mineral, and Divide. So, we move rail cycle around sort of ahead of whichever section of track we're going to be working on next. We're actively putting ties in the railroad south of Mineral. And we've repaired 2 major washouts on that section. So prior to April 30th, I'll talk about sort of what our plans were. Prior to April 30th, we have been actively pursuing the sale of the railroad. So we've had a 40+ year lease with a buyout option. So I've been working on buying the railroad actually since 2018 from the city of Tacoma, from Tacoma Rail. But because of the federal funding obligations, so Tacoma Rail got appropriations funding about 20 years ago to do a whole bunch of work on the railroad, which meant that in order to buy the line, we had to go through a very, very lengthy process that included WashDOT, that included the Attorney General's office, that included the FRA, to get, the approval to buy the railroad. And that happened at the speed of government, which is real slow. So it's for the last year, we've been hearing the sale was going to close any day. The sale was going to close any day. And our intention has been when the sale closes, we will assume the common carrier obligation on the line, which for a few reasons. The common carrier obligation doesn't necessarily transfer with the sale. That's something separate that you file through the STV. So, the plan is buy the railroad, assume the common carrier obligation. From there, what we're going to do, and we're still going to do, is the nonprofit is going to form an LLC so that the nonprofit will own below it a for-profit company. The reason for that is that for-profit LLC will be the one that assumes the common carrier obligation on the line. And we'll do a pass-through transaction for the sale of the railroad. That's the long and short of that is we've came to that conclusion after talking to attorneys for about a year. It does a few things. It protects the nonprofit, from sort of the liability associated with running a railroad, which is not insignificant. But it also allows us to do some separation with our staffing so that we can assume the common carrier obligation, pursue freight service. We can add ourselves to the railroad retirement system, which when we have as young of a staff as we do, that's a really good incentive to keep people. Our goal is that we're going to pay our staff a real fair wage and that they're going to be able to support a family and take care of themselves, and we've got a bunch of guys in their 20s, so we pay them railroad retirement. I don't think they're going anywhere, especially if they get to play with steam engines for a living. But it also allows us to attract other folks, from the rest of the railroad world as employment. A lot of what I'll talk about today is the gray area that tourist railroads exist in. So there's been a huge shift in with changes in DC and whoever is in charge, there's these huge pendulum shifts that we see. Trump V1, the first go around with Trump, there was funding cuts to the FRA, so they eliminated a lot of staff without necessarily eliminating regulations. So it was hard, there are challenges in that, right? There was a lot of folks opted, with COVID, a lot of folks opted for early retirement, and the FRA was just generally a little bit understaffed. The Biden administration came in, obviously sunk a lot of money into transportation and staffed up again. At this point, a lot of folks had retired who had experience. So a lot of the folks that came in, especially inspectors, don't have a ton of experience, which, that brings its own challenges. I think the railroad industry is better for regulation, but consistent and fair regulation is also really important. So I think that the very quick ramp up of staffing resulted in some challenges with consistency of interpretation of the CFRs. This go around, there's another quote unquote deregulation of the FRA. There's an executive order that for every new regulation that's introduced, 10 have to be eliminated, and there's very short orders to review regulation for elimination, which makes it challenging. For our steam inspector, Brandon is no longer our steam inspector. We found that out about 2 weeks ago. But there's been this redistricting of the FRA, which right now on the West Coast, technically, according to the FRA website, we report to Sacramento. We would call Sacramento and say, hey, we report to you. We have a question. And they'd say, no, go to the Seattle office. The Seattle office would say, you're not a short line, so you report to Sacramento. We do our best to comply with regulation, but it's really hard to comply with regulation when you don't know who is regulating you, if that makes sense. So one of the things that incorporating as a short line does is it makes that chain of command a lot clearer. And then we're reporting to local folks in Seattle. Then we know what regulations we're complying with and we have to comply with. So there are tangential benefits. What I'm saying is to actually incorporating as a short line and assuming that common carrier obligation. There's sort of a lot of other business considerations there that make it make sense. And of course, we believe that there's a very good case to be hauling freight out of Morton. There's still two large mills that are busy. Alta's, got 35 trucks a day, 6 days a week coming out. They're on sort of a postage stamp size lot. They can't truck any more out. Hampton, of course, they own their own transload. So, they're trucking materials from Randall and from Morton to their transload, but they're still trucking it significant distances just to put it on rail cars anyway. So, there's other issues in Morton. The roads are having a really hard time handling the number of trucks going through them. So, we have been slowly pursuing freight. Now, before April 30th, the way that we were planning on doing that was through a CRISI grant, largely. So we're working with local loggers to clear the right of way, which is great because so far we think we're able to do that basically at cost by selling marketable timber on the right of way to cover the cost of clearing it, which was something that we were unable to do under our lease from the city of Tacoma. That's something we've only been able to do since we've owned the railroad. So we're starting that process. But a CRISI grant we were going to pursue a CRISI grant, the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure Spending. I know what all the acronyms are. I don't necessarily know what they mean. But that's got a cost benefit analysis for, the number of carloads you're going to be hauling, trucks off the road, all of those things. So we were planning on pursuing a CRISI grant for the section of railroad, particularly between Mineral and Morton, as well as upgrading some bridges between Eatonville and New Reliance. That we were targeting between 15 and 20 million. That sounds like a really big range, and it is. Some of that is because there is volatility in the market. And unfortunately, as a tourist railroad, we should be an incredibly apolitical organization. But unfortunately, there's no way to talk about the reality of some of the challenges we're facing without talking about what's happening in both Olympia and in Washington, D.C. So tariffs impact steel and most railroad timbers coming from Canada. So there's a significant impact there. There's also a Buy America program, which is a 25% additional increase on material sourced outside of the U.S. If there's federal funding backing it. So, the reality is we've said 15 to 20 million is what we're going to do. The large expanse, $5 million, that's a large room for error. That's sort of just a result as it's very hard to predict costs right now. So, that was more or less the pre-April 30th plan, was to pursue a CRISI grant. We've had a bridge inspector look at every bridge basically between Divide and Eatonville. They're all good for 286. We could haul freight. The standard for bridges to carry freight is less than it is for passengers. So our bridges aren't necessarily in great shape on the Eatonville section, not necessarily as nice as we would like them to be for passenger service. If we started running passengers, we would have to do some upgrades fairly quickly because, when you start running heavyweight over it, it's, going to have an impact. But that was a piece of good news, as well as the bridges on the Morton branch are, we're all in great condition. Most of them were rebuilt 20 years ago and looking real good. So I'm happy to sort of take questions now on the pre-April 30th plan, and then I can talk about what happened in the changes.
So didn't two things happen on April 30th?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll clarify that when the time comes.
Yeah, it's sort of making sure everyone understands the lay of the land before April 30th is we had a plan and I liked it. Yeah. So
Can you see that okay, Bethan? Here's a
yeah,
map that
yep.
Trent drew and kind of gives us an idea. So if this helps, we'll just keep it up. How's that sound?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That works.
All right. Good
So
deal. Keep going.
yeah, um April 30th, we received word that the mayor had finally signed the sale of the railroad and the paperwork was delivered to our attorney's office. Now, I had not signed it, but the paperwork was delivered to the attorney's office. Which basically in Washington state means we bought the damn thing. But then the bridge caught on fire. I had actually taken most of my crew out to dinner at the Mexican restaurant in Morton. And one of the guys saw black smoke sort of coming from the valley as he was driving through. And then, the wonderful world that's Facebook, people started posting pictures of smoke. And looking at where this thing is, which is between Divide and College Junction. Well, there's Trestle. Is that marked? 19 Creek. It's ahead of 19 Creek, right around College Junction. Right. Yeah.
Did I put
Anyway,
the trestle in the right spot?
I think it's a little too far south, but you're really
Okay.
close.
Okay.
It's closer to where you have College Junction, which is
Okay.
why I was questioning my sanity.
Okay.
It's milepost. What is it? 55.9. No, it's GG. I'm gonna tell you right now, which do I gonna sound a little silly, but
And thanks for correcting my map, which is going to press in a couple of days.
GG 92. No, I don't have the exact milepost. I will get it to you though. It is on the old maps, the bridge is marked as GG 92. It never had a name. We always called it the Big Scary Bridge. So anyway. um so we saw black smoke. There is nothing else in that area. That's all forest land. Whether it's sort of logging privately owned for logging or whatever. There's nothing happening back there. So Rowdy sort of went like, oh, it's the bridge. It's the bridge because, when there's black smoke, it means there's a structure on fire. White smoke is a forest fire. Black smoke means that there's something there. So we didn't even quite know where road access to this thing was, mostly because it didn't really exist. So we started driving from Morton towards LB, or towards Mineral and pulled off. When we pulled in sort of to the back logging roads, there's like three gates that we had to go through that were open at this point because, fire crews, the volunteer fire department had been there. But it took them over an hour to access it and figure out where it was. And that's not, there were some folks that thought that was a criticism of, the response, and it's not. That is just a fact based on the territory that this thing goes through. So we pulled up and we were, sort of waiting at the bottom of the logging road, listening, with one of the volunteer fire guys. And we heard over the radio, like, yeah, there's a bridge on fire. Now there's a trestle right before this one that's smaller. So we were hoping it was that one. And then we heard over the radio, no, it's at least 300 feet. And we knew which one it was. That was a Wednesday night. So Wednesday night, the DNR crews showed up, but DNR made the decision to pull their crews off because it was dark. They couldn't see anything and they were worried that it was going to collapse and be dangerous for them. we were back on, so we knew what it was. By about 4 a.m, my phone started ringing. As it had sort of gotten out on the fire alert pages and things like that, what was happening. So I did put out a brief communication that just said, yeah, we believe that this is our big scary bridge, which is, what we had called it. We'll keep you updated as we know things. So at first light, we went back out. At this point, there were probably about 100 Department of Natural Resource, wildfire crews on site. And at this point, at least one span of the trestle was sort of gone. And there was, at a joint, all thread was holding the thing together. We stayed on site. I say we, my roadmaster, who we hired Corey from Rainier Rail. So he'd been on the job maybe 3 weeks. Poor guy. And this was, he's sort of thrown to the wolves. So he stayed on site the whole time, and I went back and forth between being on site and, talking to the media. We opted to try and give regular, which is, in the world of public relations, we probably didn't do things by the rule book, but we opted to try and provide as many updates as we could. I see I've got a hand raised.
Oh, yeah. So my question is, when I would go to the Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad about 10 years ago, I don't remember it being connected to the rest of the railroad network. So are the tracks like connected to Rainier Rail and BNSF, or are they separate?
Yes. No, we connect to the rest of the world. We interchange with Rainier Rail in Eatonville.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep. So we were on site all day Thursday. We opted to provide updates, which was a little bit it was hazardous at best because I had 1 bar of service and was uploading from my phone, so not everything was nicely, neatly packaged. But provided updates as things happened. We figured if we weren't controlling the narrative, that rumor would be rampant and someone else would. So, that's how we handled it, was trying to get information out with frequency and the best facts and information we had at the time. We were worried that this thing was going to collapse down to the side because the trestle, sort of the stats on the trestle, 300, about almost 400 feet long, 396 feet, I think, but depending on what information you read, there's a little bit of variability there. 72 feet high, 12.5-degree curve, which is significant. And let's see, 12.5, 1.8% grade was the lay of the trestle. So the way that the trestle curved and the way the geography was, the way it was burning at first it was burning fairly evenly across it. We were really worried that it was going to go over on its side. It was clear that the structure was pretty much a loss. And DNR, they fight wildfires. They don't have experience with structures. So this was new and this was challenging for them. So they were working on cutting a fire break first by hand because there's no way you could get equipment back there. And then they did get a dozer in to, doze a larger fire break. So it's the first collapse, I think, was probably around 4 o'clock Thursday. And then that, sort of increased the fire a bit. You have materials sort of creating a much larger campfire. That got things really cooking for a while. And it continued to burn. At this point, our crew, Corey and I were there and we're just, talking to DNR. debating the best course of action forward. And we knew that the bridge wasn't salvageable. So you reach a certain point where it's better to just let it burn and work on containing the my son, and work on containing sort of the situation around it. If this had been in July, there's no doubt in my mind that that whole valley would be gone, because Friday was windy. Okay, hey bud, yeah, I'm working now, but you can come in and charge that. Enjoy the working from home. But yeah, Friday got really windy. And that was a bit scary, but at this point, DNR had been able to cut a pretty decent fire break in around it. And unfortunately, the wind sort of continued to fuel the fire. But again, you reach a certain point when you realize the whole thing is going to be gone. And if it keeps burning, that's going to be, unfortunately, better for cleanup in the long run. So, let's see. Can I share my screen a little bit? I don't have a nice photo.
You should be able to, we were able to share, Trent was able to share his map, so it should work for you.
There we go. So this is not organized by any means. This is just my photo gallery, but this is sort of after the first collapse. Can y'all see that?
I
We're
see
probably
it,
at
hopefully
200.
everybody else does. Yeah. I see
Yeah,
it.
probably 200 feet of
Pictures
suspended rail. And, we just sort of camped out on that tree stump most of the day, monitoring this. This photo is about 6 days after it started burning, I think, is when this one was taken. So the thing burned for almost a week. And we still have suspended rail on the site, but you can sort of get an idea for what it looks like. So, at this point, there's a few considerations. One is the investigation. One is cleanup, and then the next is a rebuild. Let's see, I'll play this. This is probably a lot of you have already seen this.
How many of us rode trains over that bridge? I certainly did, my share at times. Yeah, it's pretty moving.
Yeah. But you can also see that there are no access points. So that is a lot of what it looks like. We'll do, let's see. And again, I didn't do a nice prep job here, but the site is incredibly remote. Here we go. Here's the bottom. So it was probably a week before we were able to access the bottom of it. And This is what the base of the trestle looks like. These are, sort of the forefront here. Those are pilings, which are obviously pretty much gone. It's a little hard to tell, but it's a very steep grade. The valley, the way it's designed, it's sort of a drop down right on either side. It was incredible. The steel got hot enough to bend and just snap. This right here is the biggest challenge. And what that is that's a stream. That's a tributary to the Chilton River, which is a sensitive salmon habitat. And you can see that that's a lot of creosote, burnt creosote timbers in a stream. So for cleanup, you can see the rail got hot enough to just snap right there, which is incredible. Corey, our roadmaster. So, at this point, the first thing there's two things we need to do. Is one, there's an investigation happening. The Lewis County Sheriff's Office is the lead on the investigation. Given the access to the site, I am very comfortable saying that this thing was a deliberate act. That's Corey's scavenging parts. Each of those is worth about $80 a piece now. So we started counting dollars on the ground, which is not a good thing to do for your sanity and mental health. But the investigation, the Lewis County Sheriff's Office, I believe, is incredibly under-resourced. We've talked to Washington State Patrol, we've talked to the FBI, we've talked to Homeland Security. Because we have had past threats, because someone likes to send us death threats upon occasion, because we've had someone try to break into the property, threatening to blow up locomotives, we're hoping that the FBI will get involved and take this on as a case of sort of eco-terrorism or some such thing. But that has not happened yet. We know that the Lewis County Sheriff's, those are pilings right there. We know that the Lewis County Sheriff's Office, for whatever reason, has not returned everyone's calls that have, given tips. We believe there to be a few good suspects. And I think, from the railroad's perspective, we're very comfortable saying that, unfortunately, that this was the deliberate act. So, having said all that, there's significant challenges with the investigation. I am very worried that this is not an isolated incident and that unless someone is caught, that we are in danger of something like this happening again. The other sort of complex in dealing with the situation, from a regulatory perspective, again, the shakeup in Washington makes things very unclear, as does our railroad status. It is not clear whether tourist railroads receive federal preemption. Currently, as we've been going to get permits from the Department of Ecology, Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, they've said as long as you're doing work within the right-of-way and you're not entering the stream, that you don't need permits. But we do need permits to build roads, access roads through private land, which is what we have to travel through to get to the cleanup. Now, those roads are remote logging roads. The bridges are all old flat cars. So we're likely going to have to beef up the roads, build a new road, and do a lot of work to even be able to get into the site to access it. When was the trestle first built? It was actually built between 1909 and 1921. It took them that long to complete. Is we have all of the original build documents for it that we've just found, and they're really interesting. So from a regulatory perspective, it's a tough one. We're going through private land and working on the railroad right of way. We have to properly dispose of creosote timbers, which it can be between $130 and $190 a ton to do that before you truck it That's just the disposal fee. So I think it is not hyperbolic to say that the cleanup alone has the potential to bankrupt us. I'm hoping that we will find private companies that are willing to donate sort of machine time and operators to assist with the cleanup. But we still have to pay for disposal. Right now, there are no emergency. We've talked to, the head of the rail division for WashDOT. We've talked to many elected officials. It does not appear that there are any funds out there for emergency cleanup anymore. We've raised $200,000 on the GoFundMe, which is incredible, and we're really appreciative of that. That money, a good chunk of it is going to be spent building access to the sites that we can start cleaning up. We don't want to leave, we just, A, it's a nuisance attraction, B, it's an ecological issue. So we need to navigate that. Who's threatening the railroad and why? That's a great question. There is one person that's probably very mentally unstable, that has left a sort of a manifesto and has had interactions with it. We don't know who it is. When they were on site, they were masked and it was night, but was railing against evil corporations and the ecological impact of railroads and that sort of thing. And then it seems like they've sort of picked me out as a problem because I am the head of this evil corporation. The fact that it's a nonprofit, that part of our mission is environmental sustainability, those things haven't registered or don't matter. We have one or two property owners that, on the Morton branch that maybe, but for the most part, the community is incredibly supportive of us. And the local community has really rallied around us. But unfortunately, there has been a series of incidents. And we believe this may be a continuation of that same series of incidents. So, politically, right now, without, criticizing law enforcement, how do we put pressure on law enforcement to try and take this really seriously and investigate it? The federal funding dollars aren't necessarily as available as they were. Washington State's budget is a mess. There are a few avenues for us. The ones that we have identified are congressional directed spending. So that's sort of appropriations funding. That's going to require a lot of lobbying to our elected officials. So one of the things that folks can do to help, if you go to our website, it's wfim.org. I'm going to put it in the chat. We have what can help. There's who the right to. And we would really encourage folks to contact elected officials, say that this matters. Our current economic impact as it stands is about $9.5 million a year. And it would only increase. We've been operating at capacity, the ability to haul freight, all of those things matters. So the path forward that I see right now is congressional directed spending for cleanup and possibly for a rebuild of the bridge. Continuing to pursue a CRISI grant for the rest of the rebuilds. And Washington State also has FRAP funding, Federal Freight Rail Assistance Program. Historically, most of the money from the FRAP program has gone to state-owned railroads, state-owned short lines in Eastern Washington. So our rebuild costs were between $5 and $6 million for a timber trestle and $8 to $10 million for a concrete steel ballast deck bridge. Ken Kirschling with Railstar Engineers did those cost estimates for us for free. We have some support and some willingness to help from BNSF, not monetarily, but in terms of sort of skills and expertise. Potentially doing drawings, helping with RFPs, all of that. So that's really helpful. But it doesn't give us a clear path forward right now. We've identified what we think our avenues are, but it's going to require us to keep this sort of in the forefront of the media and of political pressure. And it's going to be a lengthy process of sort of lobbying, making a case for why this matters, trying to push both funding and an investigation. So, I mean, that is the general lay of the land of where we are now. The next steps for us are continuing to meet with elected officials, trying to put pressure on them, encouraging folks to write in and to call their elected officials, continuing to try to raise money. And then we're waiting on quotes. We've had folks out to look at what building that road in is going to be, what that's going to look like, and trying to find folks to help us, honestly, with the cleanup. I don't think there's any way to estimate what the disposal cost of the creosote timber is going to be, just because how do you estimate the cost of something that's partially burned in ashes? So it's really hard to estimate. The truck is going to be significant, and we have to use smaller trucks thanks to the access points and the bridges on the way to the bridge, if that makes sense. So I'm happy to answer questions. That's a sort of a large overview of where we're at, and probably not perfectly articulated, but close enough. Joel?
Yeah, so why not use the railroad itself to haul in supplies and equipment and haul the timbers out?
Yeah, I mean, we would need to rebuild the railroad to do that. There's about 4 miles there that need to be cleared. We've got a washout and some beaver damage. That may still be an option, but even so, we would need to be able to truck it from the base of the valley up to the top of the railroad, because that whole embankment now is unstable. So regardless, there have to be roads pushed in. Otherwise, we're not going to be able, there's not, even the largest of cranes aren't going to be able to sort of pick stuff up from the bottom and get it back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then one of the questions is, what happened to the rest of the railroad?
What do you mean, what happened to the rest of the railroad?
Well, you're running trains and life is good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in theory. We're still up. We're operating. Rail cycle moved, so that's operating between East Creek, Mineral, and Divide, which is gorgeous. The Porter, the steam engine, hasn't run in about 20 years. That's getting ready. I mean, getting closer and closer to coming out of the shot. So we're hoping to get the Porter up and running.
Is that
this fall.
The 5 or the 70?
Yeah, that's the 5.
The 5.
And then the 70 will go in for her 1472 right after.
Okay, so they're going to be pretty close in the overlap.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
But you're still on track to get that, even with this catastrophic distraction. You're still able to.
Yeah, we lost about 2 weeks. But yeah, we're still moving. We're still busting butt in the shop to get it done.
And ridership is good.
Ridership is good. Ridership is about 30% of our riders last year were international. So we're seeing Canadians crossing the border up north in Washington. That's down 40%. So we've seen a pretty big hit in international visitors, but the summer numbers are looking strong. We're not selling out everything we're doing this year, but ridership is definitely still strong and still profitable.
Well, you're running bigger trains, so you've got more capacity, right? Explain to me how that.
We did, yeah, we did add a parlor car on board, which is exciting. So yeah, we finished a first class car and that's looking pretty good. We are still working on coordinating the move of passenger cars we bought 3 Reading cars in North Carolina.
I was wondering
We're still
about
working
those.
on,
Okay.
yeah, still working on coordinating that move. That sort of some of those administrative functions that I really should be paying attention to have definitely been put on the back burner since the fire. Unfortunately, and I'm working on sort of getting back to it. What else? Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, I want to ask you about the kids and the dogs and stuff, but I'm going to wait till the end. So the
They're
twins are good?
feral. Yeah, they are complete polar opposites of each other. My daughter is feral and busy and happy, and Elfie is sort of a little gentleman.
Oh.
And the 4-year-old is a 4-year-old boy. He's wild.
So Nicholas has raised his hand, and I know he was looking for a picture of them.
Yeah, I'm looking for one right now.
Okay, Nicholas, you got more for us? You got your hand up. You're muted right
Yeah,
now.
I was just wondering what locomotive number 5 looks like because I've been traveling abroad looking at European engines, so I'm trying to catch up on my American train
Yeah. Oh, it
info. And
doesn't
I
want
just
me to.
want to see.
It's a 282 Mikado. I'm
Okay.
working on, let's see. I don't have great pictures here, but let me share my screen again. All right. You got that up there?
You're still green light to share. There
So
you go.
sure. I'm still there. Okay. So I have a lot of photos of the dang thing taken apart. Um, it's and the flip side of it is it hasn't run in a long time. So it's been sort of shoved to the back of the shop. I don't have a ton of other photos of it. There are a bunch on the face page. So that's probably about the last time it ran, is right there. So
92. Okay.
standard.
Oh,
Oh no,
okay.
it ran up. Oh, yeah, that doesn't have a date on it. It ran up until it ran into the 2000s, but it's a 282 Mikado rod locomotive. It's got a Vandy tender on it, which the reason it has a Vandy tender on it is because when they went to sandblast the original tender, Jack Anderson, as the story goes, Jack Anderson sent it off to be sandblasted and got a call. He picked up the phone and said, "What do you mean there's nothing left?" And it was so far gone that when they sandblasted it, the whole thing went. So I'm sure how it went is they went out on the deadline and picked the next closest tender that had the capacity. So it's had a Vandy tender on it for pretty much the duration of its career at Mount Rainier.
So a
So
couple more
Joel
hands
again.
up. Yep, Joel and
Yep.
Nicholas both. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you'd made a comment earlier about some people complaining about the mismatch of different parts and not original parts and all of this kind of stuff on some of the equipment.
Yeah.
North Carolina DOT has 8 locomotives for the Piedmont. They bought 2 brand new in '98, and then later on they got 4 rebuilt GO Transit locomotives, and then after that 2 more GO Transit locomotives. And they say that no 2 of those locomotives are the same because they can't get replacement parts anymore, and they just do what they can to keep them moving.
Yep. Yep. I mean, and that's sort of, it's sort of funny is we joke about it because as we take these things apart, humans are the same. It doesn't matter what century they were doing the work in. They may do with what they had to get the job done. And we look at logging locomotives and go, why the hell did they do that way? And we tend to sort of say, well, there must be a reason and this must be best practice. And then sort of eventually someone sits back and is like, because they probably robbed that part off another engine that was next to it and just got the thing out on the line. Yeah.
I wanted to check back. Tom Noyes. Tom,
Yep.
I saw you had a question in the chat. Did you want to explain that to us, or just chat
Yeah,
sufficient?
I can answer it.
Go ahead.
We'll be we're going to file to assume the common carrier obligation with the STB in the next few months. And we are not ready. So freight service, we are trying to see if there's any interest in transloading in Mineral. So running from Mineral to Eatonville, which would cut their transload time down,
I was
in
just
about
thinking that.
half or a
It's
third.
amazing.
So we're gonna pursue that option. I don't know if it's gonna go anywhere. And at worst, we will be an underserviced short line with no current customers. But we're still gonna do the thing. As far as operational diesels, we have an Elco that identifies as a steam engine and isn't good for much, except switching in the yard. The F unit's wheels are shot and it needs low voltage wiring. So no, if we start doing freight, we're doing it with a steam engine, which is real dumb. But I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, and this is foamy. What Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad does and does well is keep a steam engine functional. Since we have restarted operations, we have operated we've operated 524 trains since we started operations, and 510 of them have been with a Pulson 70. We have one functional engine right now, which is a terrible business model. But if we're going to spend $300,000 on like when it's all said and done, prices are nuts. If we're going to spend 250 grand, 300 grand on diesels, then why? And this is stupid, and this will make an intellectual debate about this, but we're a nonprofit and we have a mission, so why the hell not restore the Heisler for that money? I don't know. It's something we're considering. Is it silly? Yes. Depending on the frequency that we're doing freight, if it's once a month, why the hell not do it with a steam, or once a week? Why the hell not do it with a steam engine? Sell tickets on a caboose for photo freight charters on the back of it and call it a day.
Well, and there's a difference in the cost of fuel as well, isn't there?
Yeah, it costs us less to run a well-maintained steam engine than it does a diesel. As we look at our staffing is a fixed cost. Yes, we are. We will be included on the state rail plan in the next update. And we have a letter from WashDOT saying so. Was answering Tom's question, which
Yes.
that of course helps us with FRAP funding, Chrissy funding, all that nonsense.
Bethany, who's doing your primary lobbying at the state and federal level? You? Okay.
Yeah, that is we are going to need to round out that because I am one person. I currently just finished interviewing people for an executive assistant position. One or two of them have a lot of lobbying experience. We may hire a lobbyist. Andrew Barkus, Representative Barkus, is the ranking member of the Transportation Committee in Washington State. He is very, very, very supportive. So we've been using him, but he's a Republican in a Democratic state. So, I mean, the reality of this presentation has been there's probably been a lot more politics than there usually are from this crowd that we've talked about. But there's no way to talk about what our path forward is without,
It is what it
talking
is, and your
politics.
opinion is just as valuable as anybody else's. So, you know what? You're there. You should know. We're just coming up to the top of the hour, folks. Bethan has been so kind to be with us today, and just, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say this, but there just comes times I just want to cry about this because it just bums me out, right? And
we all have.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. If Wayne Monger just said we know of a U-25B that used to run on the Morton branch, and actually
I
Wayne,
know about it too.
yeah, Wayne actually has pictures of it on the Nisqually River Bridge. You know, our beautiful hunk of scrap in beautiful Richland, Washington these days. So, um, thank you. Yeah, Beth, and this has been great. And I always enjoy
Yeah.
our time together. And I wish it was best of times, the worst of times. I wish it was just the best of times. So, what I'm going to do is, you found some of those other pictures. Let's take a look at them quick. Let's take a look before I let you go. I've got all afternoon. So,
Well, I have them as slides. I'm gonna have them made into 8x10s, but I'll send them
oh,
to.
okay. All right.
Yep. So sorry about the confusion.
No, that's my fault. That's the
Well,
whole
that's okay.
So,
And I got to scan them in for my hard drive so I can make prints later for anybody that wants them, I guess.
so what I'm going to do, we normally don't do this, but what I'm going to do this one time is I'm going to stop the recording and restart the recording because we got a second program, but it's going to be different than our first program. Beth, and hang around if you'd like and learn about the Railfan cameras. Otherwise, if you've got kids to deal with, we certainly understand that. Thank you for being here. And you
I appreciate y'all, and I took a lot of your time. I am gonna get going because I got emails from politicians in my inbox that I should answer.
All right.
But
So
thank you all.
Thank you very much for being here. We'll be in touch soon, and
Yep.
this is going to end our recording. Okay, I've just restarted the program for our second feature. And so we've got a great second feature today, you know, a 2-for-1 special. And Robert Scott is going to be with us, giving us an update on regional railfan cameras and his model railroad layout. Robert, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I'm maybe actually pretty brief. We're going to cover the 3 rail cameras in the Northwest, kind of the project's status. Nicholas is on here. He's one of our folks that's worked hard with us on the rail cameras and has actually been instrumental in getting the word out on how popular these things have become. So if you remember before, we talked previously about the railfan camera we have at Chehalis. It is free on YouTube. It's streaming 24 hours a day and has been doing so for 5 years. What sets our camera off from other people is our camera actually moves. We have camera operators that routinely move it as to trains, the direction where the signals are. It's a quite a interactive time, especially if you have a little bit of time to sit and watch trains, along with the associated chat feature. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll show you this one here in Chehalis. Is able to see that?
Yep, looking good. And actually, we have video over video, which is pretty good. And you've got all this stuff up on the top. What's that all about?
So on the top of the screen, we have kind of a ticker tape that goes along that we talk about different happenings. We promote the local model railroad swap meets that occurs a couple times a year, the Amtrak schedule. The host of the camera is the Lewis County History Museum, which is located inside the former Northern Pacific 1912 built depot in Chehalis. They have been our home for 5 years. We stream our camera through Steel Highway rail cams, which is based out of the Midwest. So this is their first venture into the West Coast. We have a robust following since the camera went in 5 years ago, just under 6 million views. So it is very popular. It has a strong following of regular visitors from all around the world. For example, our camera operator right now is running camera remotely from Prague, Czechoslovakia. He is a rail fan there, has visited us 3 times over the last 3 years and likes coming out here, part of our group, and providing a good level of entertainment for our international audience of rail fans. You know, the cameras are out everywhere. They're on airports, they're on ports, they're on interstates for people that like trucks, like buses. So we're trying to do the same thing with a rail camera. Now, there are a dime a dozen out there. If you search rail camera, you'll have thousands around the country. What we try to do a little bit different is provide education and entertainment uh, tied to the history of the railroads of the Northwest and how the importance of the railroads have determined the growth of the area. So we do that through providing some background information, historical data, references for the PNRA to people that come in and want to learn more about railroads. Good example, one of our folks who started 5 years ago watching trains on the camera, high school student who now works up at Mount Rainier. So we do have some success stories out there of our camera being involved in directing people into the railroad field from a profession, but mostly bringing in more rail fans.
Isn't he a conductor now?
What's that?
Isn't he a conductor now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's really moved up in the world. It's good to see.
That's right. So I'll show you with the photo of the camera. This is, even though it was under virtual railfan before, but we're under steel highways now. This is the setup of the camera system that we mounted to the outside of the depot, outside the second story. So we have a fixed static cam that points to the north, and the PTZ, or pan tilt zoom camera, is operated remotely, that is on the upper part. The zoom on those cameras are pretty impressive. So they give good quality views across the board when it comes to trains that are off in the distance. So we'll come back to Chehalis here in a second. We'll talk about the two other cameras that we have in the state of Washington under steel highways. Late last fall, we installed a camera at the former Northern Pacific Depot at Ritzville, Washington, over towards Spokane. This is in the former depot building there. Great historical society. The thing that's neat with these cameras is you can rewind up to 12 hours. So good example, here we go at 5:17 a.m. with the sunrise. And here we have, a train that's rolling through. There's all kinds of different things throughout the day that people can scan. So here's a current view looking at Ritzville. This one here has a little bit different since Ritzville only has one Amtrak each way per day. And there's a rolling ticker tape here that will have information about the museum and links associated. About the same time, we brought the Olympia Lacey Centennial Depot online. This is along the main track right outside of Olympia. This is the video this morning of Amtrak 11 arriving. So again, you can go back 12 hours on this camera as well. This camera sees 14 Amtraks a day. So if you're an Amtrak or passenger train fan, this is a great camera that people watch. Right now, there are 58 people watching this camera. That's the Amtrak view, but if we go current live view, a little bit different. The camera's been turned by a camera operator and it's pointing towards the north. So you can tell the optical quality of these cameras. And again, this is a free camera, free on YouTube. Anyone to watch. There's no fee. There's no
No
paywall.
membership, no paywall, none of that stuff.
Right. We have very limited on the ads. When we were under VR, the ads were as often as every 7 to 9 minutes, and unless you wanted to pay for their premium service, and we thought that's doing a disservice for people. We know people that have these screens or these cameras on computer monitors or TV screens around their house 24 hours a day. We started our camera during an interesting time during the lockdowns during COVID, so it was really a good friendly way to relax watching trains while being locked up at home. So, and a lot of our folks that we have here are following us for the past 5 years on a regular basis. So right here at Centennial, this is live. We've got an Amtrak train arriving. So this makes the stops. This is part of the area between Nisqually and East Olympia. So pretty much straight as an arrow for about 6 or 7 miles.
Pretty cool. Yeah, good timing on our part that
Oh, absolutely.
right when we got a train. That's great. So talk a little bit about how you got started with VR and how you evolved into the platform you are in now.
So our original concept was to put a camera on site in Chehalis. So originally we looked at Vancouver. The city of Vancouver and the railroad was not real receptive to that, given the historical status of the building. So we started looking elsewhere. City of Centralia had no interest whatsoever. They couldn't believe that people stood around and watched trains. So we went to Chehalis, and we had a very receptive group with the Lewis County History Museum and the museum board, and we put the installation in with VR. There was initial investment for us was about $5,000. That was privately funded with a few individuals. We do have an ongoing annual cost of about $3,000 since we do have a 15-year lease with the Weyerhaeuser Company for a radio antenna site on Bafa, which is the highest peak in the Southwest Coast Range. We utilize that for a larger coverage railfan radio, railroadradio.net for Centralia South, that basically covers everything on the big radio listening from Vancouver all the way to the channel break at Tenino. So folks can decide if they're watching the Chehalis camera, they can fully immerse by listening to the larger radio and really hearing the detectors, hearing the dispatcher talk. And after a short amount of time and paying attention, you get a really good operational perspective on how the railroad operates. And I'm saving the best for last is our train sheet. But again, our ongoing cost, we have donations link on our Chehalis page. And that money doesn't go to YouTube, it goes directly to pay for our annual costs for our lease and our upgrading battery backup. Our uptime on our camera is about 99% because of the way we have it structured, operating remotely. So we're fairly confident on how robust that is. Each area has kind of a different group. If we look like at Ritzville, there are just a handful of people watching there. Olympia has 56, and that will fluctuate with Amtrak's arrivals. People will tune in at certain times when the Coast Starlight does their station stops. It's almost like a wave. The wave and viewership goes up and then it goes back down. At Chehalis, let's see, we have 58 people watching this now. We have an associated chat on the right that shows what's happening. There's everything from model railroading to baseball to whatever can be discussed in here. It's a safe place for younger members since it's well modulated and moderated. So we make sure that people have a good opportunity of learning about railroads and trains, and have developed quite a few new Railfans out of this. At least twice a year, we have a Railfan gathering. We did our Railfan gathering just past 18th of May, and had about 60 people, 60 Railfans from all over the Northwest show up for a day of Railfanning at the camera. A lot of people will stop by just to make a point of waving. If you saw the camera just moved, our camera operator in Prague is heading to bed since it's about 7 or 8 hours difference for him. So it'll be idle until we have somebody else that's going to hop on the camera and run it, which will be here in a little while. The thing that's also associated with this is our train sheet. There's links in the description for a train sheet, and that one's not needed. Am I still on here?
Yeah, you're still on, but all you are is just a cursor waving around your arms.
I know. Yeah, that's the
I don't know
problem.
what happened
Give me
there.
a second.
Yeah.
While it's recovering, Nicholas, you got a minute? You want to talk about your involvement in logging trains and running the Fort Madison cameras?
Sure. I started watching the Chehalis camera back in 2020. And the funny thing about it was I didn't really know much about towns away from the military base in Washington State at the time. So I kind of felt like it was too good to be true that this place was actually only 30 miles up the road. But I actually started visiting and getting to know Robert Scott and all the other great people there. And that's when I became a VSA and later on a camera operator. We have lots of good motive power that comes through. I think we had FD6BM 1453 roll by a few times and many other things.
So tell
So
us
he
what's
just talked
going on
about
here.
you just talked about being a VSA. We have people that attend our train sheet, which is essentially a Google Sheet program that has ability for certain people to make changes to. VSA is a virtual station agent, so they're acting the role as a telegraph operator at the depot with a train passing by, recording the train symbol, the direction, the car, train makeup, consists, and any specific notes. And they have been doing this consistently above 95% success rate for the last 4 years. And this is a crowdsourced document. And these VSAs really like the numbers, really like the aspects of railroading. You can go back and look at yesterday, Tuesday, for example, at the trains that ran through. Our VSAs over here on the right shows their initials, just like telegraph operators would. So you see how many people throughout the course of the day of our 15 or so VSAs that hop on and log trains. Chehalis had 46 trains yesterday go through. People that are looking to railfan the area, you can look at a rail data analysis sheet, which is generated from the data here to show how many trains per day per railroad at Chehalis, and this is an ongoing number, so that would be raised up. Shows the daily frequency of trains based upon our train data. So you can see during 2021 where the COVID reductions on the Amtrak were in place and there are increase up to the current level of traffic. You can see during the course of the year the common natural flow of traffic levels. That is all stuff that is gathered from our folks putting the data in. The average train count for the week, their average, and this changes as of the average of trains throughout year to date from when we started running numbers. So there's quite a bit of information you can look at for those folks that are really number driven or number specific driven. There are a couple different tabs on here. We'll go back to Wednesday's sheet. You can look at this if you want to have an example of a train sheet from 1973, including the Milwaukee that ran on this line. Here's one that we obtained and we transcribed it into what our train sheet looks like. You can kind of see what the railroad looked like back then. Wednesday also we have another tab called Rocky's Railroad U, and that is an educational tab that we have links for different aspects of learning about railroads, how railroads operate, historical railroad films, recommend Railroaders 1958 by the Canadian Film Board. That's a required watch by all of our folks that log trains to kind of get the bigger concept of our railroading that we do in logging trains. So there's quite a bit of stuff on here for people to look at, and it's free. The only thing we ask is when we do fundraisers, if you like what we're doing and want to continue to do that, is to throw a little bit our way. There's a lot of things that we have learned in dealing with different levels. We want to provide education and entertainment at the same time. A lot of places that have rail cameras, they don't care what the train it is, they don't care what color the train is, they don't care where it's going or what's on it. But I know for a fact there are a group of rail fans out there, a small group that do like that information, and that's what this camera is tailored to. Along with the railroad radio, we used to have ATCS coverage until the railroad switched over from that. So at one point, we had people that would have multiple screens set up at their house. I've got a couple screens here now where they would have the static camera on one screen, the PTZ camera on the other, and the train sheet up with the ATCS logo running on another screen below it. So it's almost like sitting in a control tower at that spot because you're looking out the window, which are the screens, and you've got the dispatcher display from ATCS and you get the train sheet. So we have a lot of people that have developed their own home rail fanning abilities through the different tools that we offer. Looking for the future for us is continue to develop. We would like to eventually put a railfan park in Chehalis, trying to work with the city in order to develop that. So that has been kind of something that's been off and on. Again, we just had a very successful visit gathering at Chehalis. It's a great outlet for rail fanning. You don't really have to spend anything. And we love the feedback of folks that have taken a peek at it, and I'll open up for questions. George.
Yeah, so that shot you got there at Chehalis, if you want to put it on the screen.
Let's see.
I like that shot too. Okay, so to the far right there, I don't know if they're still in business. That used to be National Fruit, and
Still are, yeah.
They are a packer for Bird's Eye and other brands of frozen foods. And then to the left there, because it's right alongside what would be the east side of the main line, there was a connection, I don't know if it still exists, to where the rails to the UP and the BN at that time could go out to the Chehalis Industrial Park, what we used to call going out to the country.
Yep, that's still there. It's only switched by BNSF now.
Okay. And out there they had another frozen food plant, and they were real generous at Christmas time. They would give us all these huge butterball turkeys and stuff. So where are we at there? Yeah.
It looks like
I'm trying to find a different Chehalis photo for you, but no, that's Hillgard.
Yep.
So my question is, when I look at your at the Chehalis page, where do donors make donations? I didn't see that.
Okay, on the Chehalis page over here on where it says chat.
Yeah.
On the right, pinned to the top is donate. You can
Okay,
donate.
there you
right
go, folks. So there you go. You can now, is that just PayPal or how does that
It's through
work?
PayPal, or people have sent stuff through to us. I mean, whatever. And then also down here in the description, you can go for we're not always in people's face looking to donate. So it's
No. I'm just, but it
there.
wasn't obvious to me, and I wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
people,
that's probably why, it's
you're
but
not trying to overkill it. So yeah.
but also on the train sheet, for people to get a better idea of this line, and I'm sure George can really explain is the grade profile and the location where Chehalis is within that grade profile. So from an
that one
operational
shot,
standpoint, this is more interesting than sitting trackside at like Nisqually, because okay, here at Chehalis Junction, so the depot is on kind of where the camera is right at 58. So they've got a 5 mile, 1% climb to Napavine. So when you get a heavy southbound drag manifest, they'll come through Chehalis at 50, and then by the time they get 2/3 of the way up the hill, they're about 13 miles an hour. So a lot of times you'll have freights or other trains that are close following on their blocks will get held at Chehalis Junction waiting for better signals to follow up the hill. So in case the first one stalls, they don't have the other one stall behind it. Have you tried that before, George? You had stalls on Napavine?
So if you have that other photo of the UP train coming down through Chehalis Junction itself, it's in a swale or a swag.
Let me look here.
I saw it for a moment. I'm going, oh, there's where my buddy crashed.
Let me go this.
I don't think that's
like Pendleton.
I don't know if that's the spot. Okay, okay. Well, anyway, so yeah, once you get on that grade, at that time they read the profile as 1.16%. And with two SD40s, you could crawl up there at about 15 with about 6,000 tons. So about 1 horsepower per ton, you could take up that hill at 15, which was generally about you're getting near the real short time rating on there of about
for the SD40s,
1,050 amps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
here's a photo that shows this is taken at track level, looking due south with the depot on the left. You can you see the camera.
You see that guy coming out of that
little sag
swale there.
Yeah, it's a 0.3 coming up from where it crosses the creek. I always thought that was kind of neat of how that set.
So
if you're
George,
in dynamics,
tell me the story about that spot.
Oh, about Chehalis Junction there, that swale?
Yeah.
So remember I was telling you about my buddy Crash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Crash was coming north with his engineer. He was a student at the same time I was. Uh, Crash was. So they dumped I don't know, a bunch of UP open hoppers there. I don't remember if it was coal or something else. And so, like I said, his nickname when we got to engineer school was Crash, and mine was, of course, was Firebug. I wish you had a camera at Stillicum facing the ferry dock from the depot, because you'd see the ferry dock that was used in war games,
Mhm.
and you would see the bridge that was the
How about
replacement
that?
for the bridge that I caught on fire at Bridge 15, the one that's in the little inlet there. That's the back pool
Yeah.
of the Narrows.
I'll show you that in a second. This is the other end of that swale coming
Yeah,
into
yeah,
coming
that's
out of
it.
Chehalis towards the junction.
That's you're just starting to go southward, and then you'll start up the grade and everything. When we come north in Dynamics there, uh, the at the
That's a bridge.
time I was there you go.
That's the old bridge you caught on fire.
Yes,
I thought your bridge was further north. This is the bridge?
yeah, Bridge 15 right
Okay,
there at the
okay,
crossing.
okay.
It's Fifth Street Waterway is what it's called.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So anyway, yeah. So on that coming north there, you're in Dynamics, and the speed through Chehalis at my time was 40 miles an hour. So you kept it in Dynamics until you're getting close to 40, and then you could ease out and start pulling on it until you were still at 40. And you could, if you really had to, you could go at 50 into Centralia, but what was the point? Because you had to slow back down to
Oh, for the
40.
curve there.
Yeah, not only that, uh, when we were going either northbound or southbound, we'd catch orders on the fly at 40 miles an hour at the depot there at Centralia.
Yep,
In the
I was
fog
rail
was really
fanning in
fun.
those rail fanning the depot when DB Garrison and Everett Wold and all those guys worked as telegraph operators. I'd go on as a kid and pester
Yeah,
them all the time.
yeah. The trainmaster there for the BN at that time that I was there was, I think it was Bob A. Striker. Yeah, there's the Chambers Bay Bridge.
For some reason,
That's
I always
Bridge
thought that was the
14.
one you caught on fire, but now I know the
No,
difference.
that's Bridge 14 there. Bridge
Okay.
15 was that trestle you showed Amtrak
Yeah,
on.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
I stand corrected.
Yep.
Stand
Oh, that's
corrected.
okay. Bridge 14 is in
there we go.
that
Bridge
movie
14.
I was telling you about.
Yeah.
The my Western U.S. railroading flick that I made. Yeah, there you go.
So, Robert, are you going to put a camera in Cheney?
I think there's discussion with that. When Sheen comes online with their depot move, they had already talked to Tom about putting a camera there. And in fact, when Mount Rainier gets back up and gets all their primary things taken care of, we'd love to be able to work with them to put a camera at Mount Rainier Scenic too.
Oh, that would be, that would certainly help promote the railroad, and they certainly need all of our help right now. I mean, my gosh, what a
Oh
tragic
yeah,
Put a
situation.
camera at Camila.
yeah.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
limitation is access. I would love to put one somewhere in LeGrand sub.
Camila is right next to the old road that runs between Meacham and I-84. That's the old US 30, the two-lane road that Dick Kindig and Hank Griffiths made all their famous photos on.
Okay.
Yeah, I know all the good photo spots.
I imagine you
Also,
do.
also on this, just real quick on the Rockies Railroad U, there's a few. We have the two Jack Christensen interviews where we did the railroad
Yeah,
beanery, where
right.
he talked
Yeah.
about running over the Seattle sub, and in fact, I would like to kind of maybe try to do that if George, you're interested in talking about running, in the days of the SD40. I think there's a lot of people that would be interested in that. So
Yeah, I did that between 79 and 86. So yeah, I got a lot of good memories out there. It was a nice run. It was just that you know, certain family conditions I had to meet, and, growing family and stuff. And there was a lot more employment opportunity at LeGrand. It was a very busy district down there. Yeah.
well, anyway, any other questions people have? One video that sometimes I watch that's fun was the was the start again of the Cascade service after the shutdown on the on the Point Defiance bypass. So we have this linked on our Railroad U. It's from the King 5 helicopter chase. It's have it running if you want to watch in the background or something, modeling at home. It's kind of a neat thing to have. Starting at Tenino and it chases all the way to DuPont, continuous with the station stop in East Olympia. So if you've not seen the line, we this is a good kind of a primer for people to look at. We also use this for people that want to know more about railroads in the area. It kind of shows the lay of the land. Another neat thing is people can watch a train go by on the camera at Olympia. And most of the time, those trains are going to continue south by the Chehalis camera. In about 45 minutes, they'll watch the same train go by the next camera. So we have people that will leapfrog watching trains all day from camera to camera. And the full trains that go by the Ritzville camera are usually seen on the other two cameras as well as they come north on their way to Canada. So it's quite a bit of fun stuff from folks, and it's been a fun part of the hobby. I've dabbled, started again in some model railroading, doing some ON30. So if you ever want to talk about that, we can bore each other to death with those kind of things too. But I'll open up to any last questions. If not, I appreciate everyone's time.
So,
On that,
what are the other cameras on the line between Spokane and Pasco?
I'm sorry?
Are there other cameras on the line between Spokane and Pasco?
No, VR has one in Skycomish, and that's the only one that I think that I know of. There might be some other private ones, but nothing that I really know.
Okay, all right, good.
hey, hey, Jonathan, I wish you could put a camera at the Joso Bridge.
Yeah, we could have one on the Joso Bridge.
That's a great spot. That's nowhere you go on accident.
No.
Yeah, I went there on purpose.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 190 feet above the river level and 3,920 feet long.
Watch for snakes.
Yeah, and if you're on a northbound and you're the engineer, when you come out of that curve just before you get on the trestle, there's no walkway on the engineer's side, so it looks like you're out in space. It looks like you're going to fall right off. Yeah, it was a little spooky the first time I did it. It was fun after that, though.
Yeah, and under that, for those people that like old railroad grades, the old was it the NPs on the opposite shore, and then what's now is the Great Northwestern. Their line comes in about where I'm standing.
That's about right. Yeah,
they go down to Arizona.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, over to Riparia, and then the like you said, the MP on the part that looks like there's a lot more land on the other end of the bridge there, like it shows,
isn't it?
What's that?
I think that's a fish hatchery over there.
Yeah. So once you get off the other end of the bridge, it's a short distance to the little passing sighting, about 6,000 feet at Joso itself.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's pretty remote from here on.
It's very remote.
That's where the falls that are in there?
Yeah, Palouse Falls State Park.
And a couple tunnels in there too, from what I remember.
Yeah, and you can drive. Of course, you can drive over the river there at Lions Ferry Bridge.
Right. I don't even like that.
That's where that vantage point is from.
Yeah,
it's a neat run, but that looks like Durkee.
That's Telecasset.
Oh, yeah, Telecasset. Okay, yeah.
There's all windmills up there now, though.
I know, it's ugly. It's really ugly.
I haven't been back in many years, but I used to do an annual trip, summer, annual trip, winter down there for photos. Got a couple cab rides over the line. Never passed. What's the siding just west of LeGrand?
Oh, Hillgard?
No, not Hillgard. The other one east of there. Perry. Yeah, I hopped off there before we got to
Union.
town.
Well, Union Junction is the only siding before you start the grade east out of LeGrand.
Right.
Well, I thought there was one halfway up.
Well, that's Crooks. There's Crooks. If you drive out of Union on Old Highway, I think it's 203.
Okay, so this is the meet happening at Crooks. He's going through on the main.
Yeah.
On the side.
They had a nice derailment there back in about 1985. They dumped a 75 car grain train right on the Piles Canyon curve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I wasn't there. I was still working in Seattle then.
What's the grade on that there?
So eastbound, the grade out of Union Junction is 1.5. The grade coming westbound is about 0.82.
Okay.
That siding now is extended all the way to Sago, so it's real long double track actually.
Okay. And this is North Powder. This is about -5 degrees.
Oh, North Powder. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Certainly looks like it.
Yeah, one of my friends went for a good ride there at, well, let's see. Yeah, that's the west end of North Powder. The east end of North Powder, he went for a ride at the switch.
Oh,
They were going 70 on a Z train and they went on the ground and they just skidded nicely along on the fuel tank till they came to a nice stop. Yeah, that's the west end of North Powder because that viewpoint is taken from across the railroad. I guess you know that if you took it.
Yeah.
But coming out of the Powder
Well,
River
private
Canyon.
crossing.
yeah, it's a private crossing. I've talked to the landowner.
Yep. Yeah. And so the railroad goes from 25 to 70 there when you're going eastbound.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I shot at Haynes or not, but I know I did a meet down there somewhere, and they were moving.
Oh yeah, we'd cook across the Baker Flats, we called it, from Baker to North Powder at 70, if we had a fast train.
There you go.
If you had a Z train, you'd cook right along. There you go, there's the meat.
Yeah, that's just out of north of Baker City, isn't it?
Yeah, between Baker City and Haynes by the steakhouse.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Oh, that used to be a good steakhouse. I don't know about now, but it used to be really good.
That's what I hear. And then, you ever any issues with Pritchard Creek?
Uh, yeah, so a long time ago, they didn't have that second main from what would be the east end of Oxman
Right.
to all the way around to Durkee. So I don't remember
There
what
you
year
go.
they put in the double track there, probably early 90s. Yeah, so that
I'd like
grade
to
there
re-
is
I'd like to
2.2.
recreate this with better light, but this is looking up from Durkee, looking up, and then it goes to the right into the Pritchard Creek Horseshoe, and then up to the left.
Yeah,
No, that's a good view.
That's
yeah,
I-84 there.
that's a condensed view, obviously, but yeah.
Yes. Tele smash, but yeah, I like especially if you got one waiting here, that's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so like if you get two trains there, they'll meet each other hopefully before that's Oxman, what was the east end of Oxman. That used to be the approach signal, well, westbound to Oxman. And if you're going eastbound, that's, it was just there. It was an
Those
intermediate,
those
and you
grade
had
plate
about another
signals,
one or two intermediates into before you got to Durkee.
were they
But
grade
yeah,
plate signals?
What's that?
what's that?
Did the UP have grade plate signals? Grade plates?
Oh, we didn't use them, but later on they changed the G code that if you had a number plate block, you could run by it at restricted speed without stopping. If it
Was that
was a stop and proceed block,
was
you
this a
could,
1.8 grade?
nope, it's 2.2.
2.2. Wow.
Yeah, there's a spot between Durkee and Pritchard Creek that sort of levels out a little. Not as a level out, but it reduces a little. And then you go right back up as you're going through the horseshoe, you're back on the full 2.2. Yeah, that's the former east end of Oxman there.
Oxford, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's a local. And then the one guy that held the local job up until he retired, he was a rail fan that lived down there.
Oh, okay. Until he retired, huh?
He
Trying to think
retired
who
about
that
probably
is.
7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been retired since 2011, so it's almost 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, best units
I'll
in the
go down.
world, those SD40s. Yeah, see, now it's a double track horseshoe. It used to be single.
There you go.
And when it was kind of cool because when you're coming down the grade, you could look back and see the rear of your train up on top. Who's that? Is that you?
No, that's my buddy Steve.
Oh, okay. So anyway, you could see when the rear of your train got around the horseshoe and then you could pick it right up. And if you were coming up the grade, you could watch the progress of your train all the way until it got in a curve. Oh, there's Hinkle Dinkle. Yeah. So they stopped using that as a hump yard. Now they
Yeah.
just do flat switching. Yep.
Well,
I
yeah,
ran that engine. I ran that engine and its mate there probably.
yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of fun to do a hump yard once in a while. We had a car in the bowl there. It hit another car and so it was like, I don't know if you can see how my hand is. So here's the one car and the other car was like this at the end of it.
Mhm.
So we pulled up there and they wanted to get the drawbars were bypassed and jammed. So at first we tried to just separate it, but we couldn't do it. So I told everybody to just stand back and we put a cable a chain on the drawbar of that car that was tilted up. And he said, instead of taking it easy, I didn't. I gave it a little throttle and then released the brakes and jerked it back and it jerked right back onto the rail. Saved a lot of time.
Well, talk about mountain grade. This is the 2-2 grade right out of Arlington and on the Gilliam branch.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. The crews that operated on that before the Blue Mountain people took over, those crews came out of Portland. That was their territory, Portland to Hinkle. So we did deliver. Sometimes we would deliver on like on a dog catch or something. We would deliver one of those garbage trains there, but we never took it up the hill.
This last year, I spent some time chasing old railroad right-of-ways. I chased the Great Southern out of the Dowels all the way down to Friend. Did some research in the archive,
Yeah.
down to some of the old rail lines that the UP had up there, Grass Valley, that type of thing. Fascinating Granger, stories up there that unless you really know what you're looking for or looking at, you would never know it was there.
Yeah,
And
McCullough and all those places up there. Yeah.
if you get a
And
chance, are you a member of the UP Historical Society?
I am.
Rob Leachman does some great work. He did an article on the wood chip cars that UP had several years ago and talks about being a station agent out on some of those branch lines and building the new rail cars instead of refurbishing. But yeah, I still went down and tried to find the old right of way at the town of Kinzua from the Condon Kinzua and Southern.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything is obliterated, with land reclamation, but kind of a neat aspect of things. Looking at that old operation down in there, some pretty territory.
I wrote that Clerk's World article for the Streamliner there back in 2023.
Okay.
And if you've got that issue.
I don't actually have that issue, so I usually pick it up. I only want to go down to the hobby shop in Portland, which is not that often. So
I gotta write the companion article though, because that was only about my clerk days. I need to write the one for my engineer days, which might be a little more exciting.
Did you operate out to the Grace Harbor line at all? Off
Oh
Cosmopolis?
yeah. There was a part there, the speed limit on that branch was 40 miles an hour, but there was a section between Cedarville and Saginaw that was good for 50 and it held welded rail.
Wow.
And the reason they did that is because that's when they were gonna put the Whoops facility in there at Satsip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was fast rail, but other than that, it wasn't too bad.
Now, when I moved up here in '83, frequently the Union Pacific trains would detour over the Chehalis Western. Did you were part of many of those detours?
Well, back in November 85, let's see what
The
happened
washout.
then. There was various washouts. I know that I was, I think I was working a yard job or something at that time, but I didn't, or I was off during that time that they had to go up the hill. But a couple of our UP hogheads that had come from the Milwaukee they knew the territory, so they just used them as pilots. Bob Poor and Scott Buchanan, and I don't know if Gordon Russ was retired by then or what. Gordon Russ was number one seniority on the Coast Division. And he fired for me when I was on there was a Tacoma local, a couple of different Tacoma locals, but we would go out to West Tacoma sometimes, and then also out there to Moon Yard to do Continental Grain stuff. And so, yeah, we got around a bit, but yeah, what is that, 3.6%? I wish I'd have been able to operate that line. That was quite a challenge.
Well, I remember seeing a UP detour train that was doing about 40 miles an hour up that line next to I-5. Gary Weisner was a conductor. I recognized him as he went
I've
by.
known Gary Weisner since I was a kid.
Yeah, went by, and you know the character he was, and he
Oh
basically
yeah,
had his newspaper out, and he was blacking the side of the engine when it went through the grade crossing up by Maytown. Went through Maytown at 30.
yeah.
It's just so you could see the in car numbers from the cars doing this.
You know how he passed away, right?
Yeah, yeah, the accident. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he and I got along real well. He was a good guy, but uh anyway, yeah, the I never did detour over that part of the Milwaukee, and then about the last few months that the Milwaukee was still here, we had already taken over the operation with the CTC machine and everything, and most of the time the Milwaukee trains were in the hole for us because obviously they were going to get ready to quit. I went They went out in March 15th of 80, and 3 days before that was my engineer seniority. So I remember that month really well. Happiness and sadness at the same time.
Right.
You
So now
know.
running out to Cosmopolis, did you have to deal with the lift bridge there or the swing bridge,
Uh,
or you just went to
see
Cosmo?
the
That was it.
that was the we did, but didn't have any issues with it. We, had to get if I remember right, they had to get clearance from the bridge tender, but we could go across. And
Yeah,
then
there's
one time we had to detour. So I was going down the Grays Harbor branch, and we got out there by what used to be Independence. Well, it was kind of a weird morning, and it looked like there was this fog over the, ground fog, right? I get up there closer, and I see it's a big rock. So I plugged it, and it still struck the rock. With the rock, we knocked it out of the way, but it looked like the rail got misaligned there. So uh, we walked our train over that area, and then reported the dispatcher, so that when they came out, they said we had to detour over the BN side of the Chehalis River. So guy named Monty Dodge was our
yeah,
pilot. Yep.
no
And he
mind.
was a friend of Lance Lasson's, if you know who that is.
Lance too. Yeah.
Yeah, know the Lance. And anyway, and then another time I dog caught a BN train on our branch coming west, or back towards Centralia.
What year would have that been?
Oh, about probably around 82, something like that. And I remember that unit number. It was 2719, the GP 39-2.
Remember the infamous 912, 911, 912 that worked out there that kept running over people? I remember that. Kept having
Oh,
issues.
no, I don't. I
Yeah.
don't. But when you left Centralia with the Centralia Hoquiam turn, you went out on the one track and turned left at Chehalis Junction onto the UP. But then when you came back, I think you went straight coming in on the other side. One side was the OWRN, and one side was the Northern
Yeah.
Pacific.
They pulled I think the UP line, what, 85?
Oh, okay.
Is
Yeah,
that
they
about right?
probably did. And then when we would go on duty at 7 in the evening or whatever on the Centralia Tacoma turn, they in the roundhouse there they had the old chalkboard, and there was a chalk, the what unit we were supposed to use to go up there. Usually we only took one unit. That was enough to get us to Tacoma with whatever we were taking up there. It was empty tank cars and empty. There was a couple other things that were empty, and then we had loaded newsprint out of Cosmopolis, and And then
So
on the way up at
when I started rail fanning in the evening, they'd have Dean Dolan and company go south up with the LAC.
I fired for Dean one time on the Tacoma switcher
Yeah.
out at Fife. We had two GP38 dash twos nose to nose. We didn't have a jumper cable. So when they wanted us to kick cars, we'd both start out and kick cars. We'd be looking at each other and laughing like crazy because we were a couple of goofy guys, and like I said, nose to nose. So we had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, Dean was a good guy. I saw him in 2012
Yeah.
when he was here in Hermiston on the OLS special or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun reminiscing. I've really
Yep,
a
good
lot of
talking with you.
fascination with the Grace Harbor line since what I'm modeling now is kind of, Grace Harbor in 1943. So
That's not a bad time. I
yeah.
like I said, some of my modeling is a little bit different. I do the joint line anywhere from about late 40s up to probably up to the early 90s because I still have a lot of modern equipment too.
Mhm.
So I don't
Good.
know. Run what I brung.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everybody's time and the questions and visiting. Yeah, I would love to be able to do a Q&A on I could put together a slide deck of 20 or 25 shots from along the Legrand sub or whatever, and you could just roll with it. So
Yeah.
even if it's not for one of these meetings, we could always do something, then just post a video for people to watch, because really, railroaders are getting older and they're forgetting things or they're passing away. And once those stories are gone, they're gone. And the
I
best we
forgot to remember a lot of stuff.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well,
Did,
we're coming
did
up
you
to the
did you work with the
oh,
Milwaukee at all?
Well, the only thing, if you want to say work with the Milwaukee, was that I worked. I was a clerk for a couple of years, so I worked Black River and Argo Towers. And at Black River, you had all that joint trackage and all that, and the Pacific Coast operator, who was also the dispatcher at Maple Valley. But yeah, the Milwaukee guys, I'd talk to them on the their company phone line, and then occasionally I'd just go in and see them at Tacoma in their office. So I got to know Don Lair real well. We palled around and we went up to I think it was Hanson Creek and took that shot similar to Koistra's shot there on that curve from way up above. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
okay.
yeah, Don Lair and Dan Steinhoff and Jim, oh boy, just remembered his name. Yeah, anyway, I knew them and Bruce Mickelson, and there was, Sharon Hill, the only female dispatcher they had. She came to UP. Steinhoff came to UP. Don Lair came to UP. Jim, oh man, I'm really having a bad time with his name right
Bert
now.
Schneider?
No, no, not Brett Schneider. That was Andy.
That's
Andy
Jerry
was
Brett
his,
Schneider.
yeah. Jerry was a guy at Hayek, and then Andy, his dad, was a motor car
Yeah,
guy.
those were Milwaukee
Track
guys.
inspector.
One of them was at Cedar Falls too.
Yeah.
You've got your hand up. We're coming to the end of today's program, so I want to make sure I get everybody in. Nicholas, go ahead, please.
I have two questions. The first question is about teaming up with Union Pacific to have some events in Chehalis because they recently worked with the Portland Rail Heritage Center to put on something special for the rail fans down in Portland. And I was wondering if that's something to be considered for Chehalis. And my second question is, what's happening to all the EMDs in Chehalis? They've just been disappearing and not passing anymore.
Well, a couple things. First is, I had thought about that. It would have to tie in with the Railfan Park. I think with the lobby group that we have, we can probably lobby Amtrak for a special one-time stop, for the Railfan Park. Again, that's a ways down the road, but for railroads on small aspects like this, it's really not high on their priority list, but that's something that I would try to tout as the first passenger train in 60 years to stop in Chehalis. So that would be the aspect I'm looking at. Now, as for the EMD power, they're just getting new power that's coming in, and they're sending the other stuff that's either not functioning as well, or the cost to repair is just too much. They're just retiring them, or they're setting them into secondary service. This time of year, historically, is really quiet on the railroads. It's between the busy parcel season, boxes, overseas containers, and grain. So it'll be like this throughout the summer until we start getting into late August, 1st of September. But again, it went from having SD 75s every single day, multiple times, to now not seeing them at all. It's the same thing with us back rail fanning, 25, 30 years ago. You saw SD 40s every single day until you didn't see them anymore. And then it was all Gs. So interesting thing, Nicholas, you're seeing the switch that many rail fans have seen over the decades from steam to diesel, from first to second generation diesel to, EMD versus GE versus Alco. So this just more of the change. All thing you can expect in railroads is change, but really the railroads still stay the same. The funny thing about it. So, it's kind of like the fire service. And I did 36 years in the fire service. It has 200 years of tradition, unhampered by progress. Same thing, a lot of tradition. That's why you see things on the railroad still called things from the early days. The ice house or the ice dock in Eugene is now just a gravel lot, but they still refer to it in changing crews. Or Martin's Lead in Centray for Martin Lumber Company. Still this used on a daily basis. That's some of the terminology, the house track or uh, those are the kind of things that the legacy will live on no matter what. And I think it's kind of neat. And what we're trying to do through our cameras help continue and perpetuate that from continuing down the road, or to continue down the road.
Well, as promised, we had a double feature today, and I want to thank all the survivors
Yeah, I
for this
appreciate that.
program. And Nicholas, you've got my email address. Drop me a note. We can talk about what programming you'd like to do this fall for the fall series. And I've got some invites out right now that I need to land, and I'll know what I've got available left for schedules for the fall. Because I put that out and it goes, those things go pretty quick. So on behalf of the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive, Cascade Rail Foundation, UPHS, Steel Highways, and the Mount Rainier Scenic Railway, we've had a great program today, folks, a double feature like we promised. And I will be back again in 2 weeks with Bob Kelly talking about, it'd be like a cooking program, how to actually publish a railroad book. Robert, always good seeing you, my friend. And thanks everybody for being here. Jack, it was great seeing you. You're looking well. Wayne, of course, from California. And at 2:58, I'm going to say thanks everybody for being here. This is your host and moderator, Jonathan Fisher, saying until next time, bye for now. Bye, everybody.